The Money Show.
Business books.
Fabulous book for you this evening. Mann, who is the Managing Director at Gateway's Business Consultants. He is a regular book reviewer on The Money Show. You'd read his words in other publications. He hosts business book breakfasts. Or have you resumed those, Ian? Because you used to be very... you were adamant about hosting regular business book breakfasts. Did those survive COVID?
They have survived in a completely different context. Some companies engage me to do business book breakfast for themselves and their staff and their clients. So that we do it in there. Other clients just engage me to just do business book breakfast for them alone. So we're still doing a lot of business book breakfast, but just as opposed to the one we used to hold at Michelangelo every single month. We did it for 15 years. That one's fallen by the wayside.
Oh, anyway, you are reviewing for us this evening The Psychology of Money, Timeless Lessons on Wealth, Greed and Happiness by Morgan Housel. And this is one of the world's most successful books of recent years. It's been an astonishing success.
I just wanted to share with you, I'm only going to share a few of them. There's 20 chapters, so there are 20 issues of you'll probably be walking off with, probably need to read another 17. So I picked out some which I think are really important. The first one, in fact, he opens a book with this. Is he says no one is crazy. And this is really important. People have different attitudes towards money, and we often think of people behaving badly with their money, doing silly things with their money, but we need to accept that whatever they're doing isn't crazy. And I'd like to give you just two examples. The Great Depression was reputed to, and probably did, scarred millions of Americans for life. They went through seeing people around them out of work, people who had money, poverty-stricken. It wrecked people, and in fact, in demographics, they talk about the silent generation. Those are the people who went through that stuff, and they reused plastic as a result. About 25 years after the Depression, John Kennedy became the president of the United States. He said that he only learned that there was a depression when he went to Harvard. He said, I didn't know about the depression. He said, we had many houses. I traveled a lot. We had more servants. I didn't realize my father was employing unemployed people unnecessarily, but just to give them jobs. The important thing is that here was Kennedy living in the lap of luxury, whilst most Americans were in great poverty, or really scarred by what they saw. He was immune to that. Where you are, who you're born to, and when you're born makes a huge difference in how you're going to approach money. Clearly, Kennedy's approach to money was very, very different from the vast majority of Americans who were scarred by it. I want to take somebody at the other end of the spectrum, and you'll see what I'm getting to. Lotteries in the United States make more money spent on them than videos, movies, sports, and books combined. People spend more money on lotteries. And when you look at who's buying lottery tickets all the time, it turns out it's the lowest percentile of the American population. And they spend $412 a year on lottery tickets, which might or might not sound like a lot. But 40% of the United States cannot come up with $400 in an emergency. So here you've got people at the bottom of the bucket who are spending $412 every single month, and effectively blow their safety net. And the chance of them winning are 1 in 292 million. That's the tiniest percentage. You say, well, you've got to be crazy to do that. What the author points out is, he says, if you had to say to those people, why do you do this? They said, look, you're different to us. Let me tell you what us people live like. We live from paycheck to paycheck. There are no savings. Increasing our earnings are completely out of our reach. Our children are never, ever going to go to college. We don't have medical aid. We live in an unsafe neighborhood. Nothing's going to change. Our only hope is my lottery tickets. So I spend $412 every single year on the hope that I can actually get out of my condition. There's no other way of getting out. No one's crazy. People are affected by their context and their upbringing, and that's how they come up to have the views that they have on money. And we need to accept people have very strange views on money, which people who are different, born at a different time in different circumstances will think are completely false. that was the first thing. The second thing we need to know about money, and part of the psychology of money, is to understand luck and risk. And Professor Galloway he teaches marketing in New York University. He says, when you judge success, now we're talking about your own success and success of others, nothing is ever as good or as bad as it seems. When I read that, what can you possibly be talking about? So I'll give you one of the examples. And Bill Gates, an extreme. Bill Gates went to a private school called Lakeside in Seattle. Now, at the time, when he was at Lakeside as a high school student, there were 68 million people on planet Earth who were in high school. 68 million. Of those 68 million, 18 million lived in the USA. Of those 18 million, 100,000 lived in Washington State. 300 of those who were living in Washington State, only 300 went to Lakeside. So out of all the high school students on the planet, 68 million, 300 went to Lakeside. So what was special about Lakeside? One of the teachers managed to persuade the Mothers Club that they should take some money they made on a jumble sale and buy a teletype modem Model 30, which was compatible to the GE mainframe, and that would allow the boys at school to play with this thing called a computer. It was a machine and not a person. They could play with this thing in the school, and they would get onto the GE mainframe. Understand that at that time, university students, graduate students, didn't have access to those sorts of things very easily. These boys had it there all the time. Gates went to that school. Gates remembers his schoolboy friend, a guy called Kent Evan. He said Kent was the smartest kid in the class. Now, Gates is pretty smart. He said, this guy was the smartest child in my class. He said, years ago, he said, we spoke so much on the phone. And in the book called Inside Bill Gates' Brain, he actually said, I'm going to tell you his phone number. I can still remember it today. He said, we would talk about computers. We talk about how we wanted to become CEOs. He loved business just like I did. And when Gates went into business, as you probably know, it was him and Paul Allen who started Microsoft. So what happened to Kent? Well, in the United States, every year, 36 people die in mountain accidents. Every year in the United States, 1 in 100 people, one of that group, only 1 in 100 are high school students. That's the averages. Kent was killed in a mountaineering accident while he was still high school. Had he been around, he would have been with Bill Gates and Paul Allen creating Microsoft. The odds of Gates being as rich as he was is literally 300 out of 68 million who had the advantages he had. But Kent didn't get the advantages. He died in a climbing accident. The luck is incredibly powerful. It's not only where you're born, who you're born to, but it correlates with other interesting stuff. There's the economist called Mazumba who came up with, he did an investigation on the correlation between brothers. Now, if I said to you, two brothers, what do you think is going to be most similar between them, their height or their income? You say, well, if they're two, undoubtedly height. It's not, it's income.
Really?
There's a greater correlation between the income of brothers than there is between the height of brothers. And all that stuff, just luck and risk. And very often we judge our success as well as other people's success in strange ways only because of luck. And if you look at people who failed in business, when we look at people who failed in business, I think what probably comes to mind is either they were lazy or they just weren't smart. And that's possible. It happens sometimes. They were lazy and they just weren't smart. But the reality is that everything that's worth pursuing has less than 100% odds of success. And what we do in our society is we celebrate success, but not necessarily the real successes. If you look at Forbes 40 under 40, it's the top 40 people under the age of 40 who make it onto the cover of Forbes magazine and they celebrate it. You have to ask yourself the question, were they a result of a bad decision that just happen to have lucked out? Or are they not there because they made a really, really good, intelligent decision based on hard work and a lot of research, and they were just unlucky? Timing was wrong, or something else was wrong. And one of the cautions are to be very careful who we condemn and who we praise, and what we can learn from people who are very successful. And one of the things Bill Gates mentions is that we can learn very, very little from success. He says the best we can do, says the author, is to look for patterns around people who have been successful. Are there patterns that we can see there? And I think that the closest we got to this was that book that we talked about on startups a couple of weeks back, and how you can scale startups up. Yeah. He seems to collect patterns, which rather than saying, follow this man because he's going to know what's up. When you talk about success and successful people, you have to mention Warren Buffett. You actually have to mention him, otherwise somebody will think you're missing out. Only like 2,000 books written about Warren Buffett, so he's obviously on top of everybody. What's interesting about Warren Buffett is that he's currently worth about, give or take $100 million. He's worth $85 billion, $1,000 million. Multiply that by 80. That's what he's worth. Now you'd say that man is an incredible genius, and that's why he did so well. Undoubtedly, he's a careful and thoughtful investor, but there are a couple of other things we have to know about Warren Buffett, which are perhaps more important. Firstly, he started investing at a young age. When I say a young age, I really mean it. He started investing when he was 10 years old, and he never stopped. He never stopped. Had he retired when he was 20, he was already worth $1 million, which is probably $9 million today. If he'd stopped, he said, look, $9 million, I can live very nicely, I can hang out, I don't have to do anything. His $9 million, age 60, would only be worth $12 million. Interesting thing about Buffett is that Buffett made 81 billion of his 85 billion after the age of 60. After the age of 60. How did he get to making so much money after the age of 60 and so little money before, relatively? This man had been investing for 75 years. 75 years. And the author suggests that the most powerful book and most important book on economic cycles and on trading strategies should be titled A la Buffett, Shut Up and Wait. 75 years to get to that and keep going.
There's
for 75.
A huge amount to be said for persistence, for diligence, and Buffett is absolutely clear on this. I mean, he makes the point that if somebody had just started with $10,000 on the day he made his first investment in 1952, and they put $10,000 away into that and reinvested the dividends and added nothing to that money, it would be worth more than $50 million today, which in 99.9999999 up to infinity's people's cases, that would be perfectly sufficient for any human being in their lifetime. He admits to being lucky. He says he won the ovarian lottery. He was lucky to be born, to whom he was born, where he was born, in the era in which he was born, and be given the advantages that he was given in the same way as Bill Gates was. There's a huge amount to be said for luck. It's not all about luck, though. It is about persistence and skill. But boy, luck is often underestimated, Ian Mann. Absolutely. Ian Mann from Gateway's Business Consultants, regular book reviewer and managing director at Gateway's Business Consultants.